Picture this moment with me. April 22nd, 2017, 8 in the morning. A woman sits alone in a cafe in San Marino, California. Her coffee has gone cold. She checks her phone. Again. And again. Her name is Ana Estevez, and she is waiting for two people who should have been here hours ago. Her ex-husband, Aramazd, and their 5-year-old son, Piqui. But here is what Ana does not know yet. While she sits there, hoping they are just running late, praying there is some innocent explanation, her little boy is already gone. Forever. Let me take you back to the last time Ana saw her son alive. It was not at an amusement park. It was not during a happy goodbye. It was in a parking lot, captured on a camera Ana had mounted in her car because she did not trust the man who was about to take her child. In that video, you can see 5-year-old Piqui hugging his mother tightly. You can hear him say words that would haunt Ana forever. "I don't want to go." In the background, pacing back and forth, is Aramazd Andressian Jr, the boy's father, the man who would murder him less than 24 hours later. From that moment in the parking lot, let me count down for you. Piqui had 24 hours before his father would take him to Disneyland, the happiest place on earth. He had 29 hours before he would leave that magical place for the last time. He had 30 hours before his father would end his life in a remote area near Lake Cachuma. His mother had 63 days before she would learn the truth, and the world had 68 days before justice would finally be served. And during all of that time, while a mother searched desperately for her missing child, while volunteers combed through forests and lakes, while an entire community prayed for a little boy's safe return, the killer was partying in Las Vegas casinos. He went to concerts. He went skydiving. He attended boxing matches. He dyed his hair and shaved his beard. He lived it up like he did not have a care in the world. This is not just a story about a custody dispute gone wrong. This is about revenge in its purest and most evil form. This is about how a father looked at his own child and saw not a person to be cherished, but a weapon to be used against the woman he hated. You are about to hear how a magical day at Disneyland became the prelude to an unthinkable tragedy. How a father's smile hid intentions so dark that even experienced homicide detectives would struggle to comprehend them. How a 5-year-old's trust was used as the final instrument of his own destruction. This is a story about the destruction that revenge brings, not just to its intended target, but to everyone it touches. It destroys the innocent. It destroys families. It destroys communities. And ultimately, it destroys the person consumed by it. This is a true story, and I promise you, it will stay with you long after we are done here. Before we continue, if you appreciate thorough coverage of cases like this, I would be grateful if you would subscribe. It helps me continue researching and sharing these important stories. Let me tell you about Piqui. His real name was Aramazd Jr, named after his father. But everyone called him Piqui, 5 years old, with bright eyes that could light up any room and a laugh that was absolutely infectious. But Piqui was not just any 5-year-old. He was what his mother called her miracle baby. Ana Estevez had tried for years to have children. Think about this for a moment. 5 heartbreaking miscarriages. 5 times she prepared nurseries, picked out names, imagined her future as a mother. 5 times her dreams were shattered before they could even begin. The pain of losing one pregnancy is devastating beyond words. Imagine losing 5. The grief, the hormones, the questions, the wondering if you will ever hold your own child. Ana endured hormone shots. She took blood thinners. She followed every protocol, every piece of medical advice. She and Aramazd spent thousands of dollars on fertility treatments. They never gave up hope. They kept believing that someday, somehow, they would hold their baby. And then, in 2012, their miracle happened. Piqui was born, but the pregnancy was difficult, and the birth was even more challenging. Ana spent 11 days in the hospital after Piqui arrived. But when she finally held that baby boy in her arms, every moment of pain disappeared. Every loss, every disappointment, every fear melted away. From the moment he entered this world, Piqui was surrounded by love. He was the kind of child who made strangers smile on the street. He had this special energy about him, this brightness that drew people in. Ana was an elementary school principal, a job she had held for 5 years. She would sometimes take Piqui with her to work, and he would tell everyone he met, with immense pride in his little voice, "My mom is a principal." It was one of his favorite things to share about her. The teachers at Ana's school quickly recognized that Piqui was gifted. He loved reading, something unusual for a 5-year-old. He loved math, working through problems with intense concentration. He had a huge imagination, creating elaborate stories and scenarios during playtime. But what made Piqui truly special was not his intelligence. It was his heart. His preschool teachers said he was always the first one to comfort a crying classmate. If someone fell down on the playground, Piqui would be right there, asking if they were okay, maybe offering to share his snack. He had this natural empathy, this gentleness that made everyone around him feel cared for. He loved animals with a tenderness that melted hearts. He would spend hours watching butterflies in the garden, fascinated by their delicate wings. He dreamed of becoming a veterinarian when he grew up, so he could help animals that were hurt or sick. Piqui had this way of making everyone around him feel special. When Anna came home from work, exhausted from dealing with the challenges that come with running a school, Piqui would run to the door. His little arms would wrap around her legs. "Mommy, I missed you so much!" And suddenly, all her problems would disappear. He was her everything. After 5 miscarriages, after all the pain and disappointment and fear, Piqui was not just her son. He was her miracle, her joy, her reason for everything. Anna would later tell people that Piqui used to save up coins because he wanted to help his mommy buy a house. A 5-year-old thinking about his mother's future, wanting to contribute in his own small way. That was the kind of child he was. But as Piqui grew more wonderful with each passing day, his parents' marriage began to crumble in ways that would eventually lead to the unthinkable. Aramazd Andressian Jr. was not always the man you are about to hear about. There was a time, in the beginning, when he seemed to genuinely love his family, when he appeared to be the partner Anna thought she had married. Understanding this makes what happened even more tragic, because it shows how far a person can fall when they allow darkness to consume them. In the early days of their relationship, Aramazd said all the right things. He did all the right things. When he proposed to Anna, he made it special. He took her up in a hot air balloon and asked her to marry him among the clouds. It was romantic, thoughtful, memorable. During those 5 heartbreaking miscarriages, Aramazd appeared to be Anna's rock. He held her when she cried. He encouraged her when she wanted to give up. He was the one who suggested they keep trying, who told her they would have their baby someday. When Piqui was finally born after that difficult pregnancy and challenging birth, Aramazd seemed like a devoted father. He carried an ultrasound photo of Piqui on his car dashboard for everyone to see. Neighbors would see him with his son, appearing to be a caring dad. But the man Anna thought she knew was built on lies. Lies so elaborate and sustained that when the truth finally emerged, Anna could barely comprehend what she was hearing. Aramazd told Anna he worked long, grueling hours for a company called ITT. He claimed he worked from early morning until midnight, 6 days a week. He asked Anna to be very understanding of his schedule because he was working so hard to create a better life for their family. For more than 4 years, Anna believed him. She supported him. She understood when he was not home. She took care of Piqui largely on her own because her husband was supposedly providing for their future. Then one day, Anna simply wanted to make sure Aramazd had arrived at work safely. She called ITT. She asked for him by name. The campus director said, "Who?" That moment changed everything. The director did not know anyone by that name. Aramazd had never worked there. For more than 4 years, he had been lying about having a job at all. Anna was speechless. She did not know what to think. Where had he been going all those hours? What had he been doing? The foundation of their marriage, already strained, began to crack wide open. But the lies about work were just the beginning. As Anna would discover, Aramazd had been hiding much darker problems. He had developed a serious gambling addiction. While Anna believed he was at work, Aramazd was spending hours at casinos. He would disappear for entire days, sometimes leaving 5-year-old Piqui with relatives so he could chase his next bet. The money they should have been saving, the money Anna thought was being earned through his hard work, was being lost at poker tables and slot machines. Alcohol became another demon. What might have started as an occasional drink gradually became something much more serious. Aramazd's drinking was not the social kind. It was the kind that changes a person's personality, that brings out anger and paranoia. And with the alcohol came delusions that grew darker and more consuming with each passing day. Aramazd began to believe that everyone was plotting against him. In his twisted mind, Anna was not the mother of his child, and the woman he had once claimed to love. She had become an enemy. He became convinced that Anna was planning to take Piqui and flee to Cuba. He believed Anna's father was involved in some kind of religious cult and wanted to harm their son. These were not passing thoughts or moments of jealousy. These delusions became his reality, shaping his actions and decisions. As his mental state deteriorated, Aramazd's behavior became increasingly erratic and frightening. He would scream at Anna, accusing her of plotting against him. Arguments escalated. His anger grew more intense, and then the violence started. It began as it often does, with seemingly small things, grabbing Anna's arm too hard during an argument, pushing her. The incidents grew more frequent and more severe. Anna found herself making excuses, hoping things would get better, trying to protect Piqui from seeing too much. But eventually, Aramaz's rage began to spill over onto the person who should have been most precious to him. The moment Anna heard Aramazd curse at 5-year-old Piqui, using words no child should ever hear, she knew she had to leave. No amount of memory of the man Aramazd used to be, no amount of hope that he would change, no amount of fear about going through a divorce was worth endangering their miracle child. In 2016, Anna filed for divorce, but she did not just walk away quietly. She documented everything. She kept records of Aramaz's violent outbursts. She saved evidence of his erratic behavior. She had video footage of him screaming in front of Piqui, kicking furniture, creating an atmosphere of terror in their home. Anna presented this evidence to the family court. She begged them to see what she saw. She pleaded with them to understand the danger her son would be in if Aramazd had unsupervised access to him. Just 1 week before Piqui would be murdered, Anna made another desperate attempt. She told a court evaluator that she wanted sole custody with supervised visits only. She said clearly, directly, that she was afraid Aramazd was going to do something terrible. Her concerns were dismissed, completely ignored. The court ruled that children need both parents. Joint custody was awarded. Anna would have primary custody during the week, but Aramazd would get visitation rights. He could take Piqui for visits, unsupervised, every other weekend. Anna was terrified. She knew this man in ways the court did not. She knew what he was capable of when his delusions took hold, when his anger consumed him, when he felt he was losing control, so she insisted on her own safety measures. She would only exchange Piqui in crowded public places where nothing could go wrong. She installed a camera in her car to record every handoff. Building evidence for the day she hoped to convince the court to finally grant her sole custody. That day would never come. On April 15, 2017, Aramazd arrived at the agreed-upon meeting spot to pick up Piqui for what was supposed to be a weekend visit. Anna's camera was rolling as always. In that footage, you can see Piqui hugging his mother. You can hear his small voice saying, "I don't want to go." Anna held him close, breathing in the scent of his hair, feeling his small arms around her neck. In the background, Aramazd paced back and forth, waiting. Anna would later say she felt something in that moment. Some instinct telling her that something was wrong. But the court had given Aramazd these rights. She had no legal standing to refuse. She watched as Aramazd buckled Piqui into his car seat. For just a moment, their eyes met through the windshield. Then the car drove away. Anna did not know it yet, but she had just said goodbye to her son for the last time. What Anna did not know, what the courts did not know, what nobody understood except Aramazd himself, was that this visit had been planned for months. Not as a father-son bonding experience, not as a fun weekend getaway, as a murder. According to Detective Louis Aguilera, who would later investigate this case, Aramazd had been planning to kill Piqui for 3 to 4 months before that April weekend. This was not a spontaneous act of rage. This was not a moment of temporary insanity. This was calculated, premeditated murder. But the plan went even deeper than that. Aramazd was not just planning to kill his son. He was planning to kill himself as well. And he was setting things in motion to make it look like Anna had something to do with it. He wanted to destroy her in every possible way. Take away her child. Take away her freedom. Take away everything. The motive, as investigators would later confirm, was simple and chilling. This was revenge. Pure revenge. Aramazd wanted to hurt Anna in the worst way imaginable, because she had left him, because she had tried to limit his access to Piqui, because she had sought sole custody. In his mind, she had taken control away from him, so he would take everything away from her. Detective Aguilera would later tell reporters, "I can only speak for myself. If my son was missing, I would be doing things that Anna was doing, circulating flyers, looking for your son. He was not doing that. He was socializing in Vegas." That contrast between a mother's desperate search and a father's casual partying would become one of the most damning pieces of evidence against Aramazd. But we are getting ahead of the story. First, there was Disneyland. On April 20th, 2017, Aramazd took Piqui to Disneyland in Anaheim. For Piqui, it must have seemed like a dream come true. The rides, the characters, the music, the magic. This was the happiest place on earth, and he was there with his father. Aramazd sent Anna a photo that day. In the picture, Piqui is standing next to a character in costume, grinning from ear to ear. Pure joy radiates from that image. The little boy looks absolutely happy, completely trusting, totally unaware of what his father was planning. When Anna saw that photo, she smiled. Despite everything that had happened between her and Aramazd, despite all her fears and concerns, she was genuinely happy that Piqui was having such a wonderful time. She felt guilty that she could not afford to give him experiences like this more often. She texted back, "He looks so happy. Thank you for taking him." That photo would become one of the most important pieces of evidence in the case. Not because of what it showed, but because of when it was taken, because investigators would later be able to establish a precise timeline of Piqui's final hours. Disneyland's security systems, like those at most major theme parks, are extensive. Cameras track visitors entering and leaving. Electronic records show when tickets are scanned, when purchases are made. All of this data would later help investigators understand exactly what happened that night. At 1 o'clock in the morning on April 21st, Aramazd and Piqui left Disneyland. The park was closing, and it was time to go home. Piqui was likely exhausted from the excitement, from all the walking and rides and sensory overload that comes with a day at a theme park. Perhaps he fell asleep in his car seat as they drove away. Perhaps he stayed awake, talking about his favorite parts of the day, asking when they could come back. We will never know those final details. What we do know is where Aramazd drove. He did not head back toward South Pasadena where Anna was expecting them. He did not drive toward any family member's home. He drove north, away from the city, toward Santa Barbara County, toward Lake Cachuma. Lake Cachuma is an artificial lake about 145 miles from Disneyland. During summer months, it is popular with hikers and nature lovers. But in late April, especially in the early morning hours, the area is almost completely deserted. Aramazd had researched this location carefully. Investigators would later find evidence in his internet search history, showing that he had looked up Lake Cachuma multiple times in the weeks before this trip. He had searched for remote areas, places with no foot traffic, locations where someone could go unnoticed for hours. The drive from Disneyland to Lake Cachuma would take about 2.5 hours. Aramazd arrived at the lake sometime in the early morning of April 21st. What happened next in that remote location would haunt everyone who heard the details. Detective Aguilera would later testify that Aramazd killed Piqui within an hour of leaving Disneyland. He smothered the little boy with a jacket that was in the car, Piqui's own jacket. The medical evidence would later show that Piqui became sick as he struggled to breathe, which explained the vomit stains that would be found on the jacket. But Aramazd did not stop. He continued until his 5-year-old son stopped moving, until the little boy who loved animals and math and making people smile was gone. After the murder, Aramazd changed Piqui's clothes, dressing him in pajamas. Then he carried his small body into the woods. About 50 feet from a parking lot at Vista Point near the Lake Cachuma recreation area, Aramazd left his son's body among the trees. He did not bury him. He did not really try to hide what he had done. He simply left Piqui there and walked away. Aramazd spent approximately 8 hours in the Lake Cachuma area that morning. 8 hours alone, knowing what he had done. 8 hours to think about the life he had just ended. 8 hours to consider turning back, to call for help, to do anything other than what he did next. But he did not turn back. He got in his car and drove south, back toward Los Angeles County, back toward the next phase of his plan. At some point during that drive, Aramazd's phone came back on. He had turned it off completely while at Lake Cachuma, ensuring there would be no GPS data, no cell tower pings, nothing to track his movements during those critical hours. But now he turned it back on because he needed to be found. He needed witnesses. He needed an alibi. Aramazd drove to Arroyo Seco Park in South Pasadena. This was a large public park where he would certainly be noticed. He took prescription medications, pills that were not his own, in doses large enough to make him appear incoherent and disoriented. Then he poured gasoline all over his car, inside and outside. The fumes were overwhelming. His plan, according to Detective Aguilera, was to light the car on fire while he was inside it, to die in the flames, to make it look like some kind of attack had occurred. But the medications affected him more severely than he had anticipated. He passed out before he could light the gasoline. The car remained intact, reeking of fuel, but unburned. On the morning of April 22, 2017, a pedestrian walking through Arroyo Seco Park found Aramazd unconscious next to his car. The man was barely responsive. His eyes were unfocused. He could not stay upright. The pedestrian called 911. Within minutes, police and paramedics arrived. They found Aramazd in a state of severe drug intoxication. When they searched his car, what they discovered immediately raised red flags. The interior reeked of gasoline, as if someone had poured it everywhere but had not been able to light it. They found knives scattered in the vehicle. They found psychiatric medications strewn across the seats. They found evidence of someone who had clearly been planning something terrible. And most chilling of all, they found Piqui's jacket in the car. The jacket was stained with what appeared to be vomit that had dried into the fabric, but there was no sign of 5-year-old Piqui anywhere. When Aramazd regained consciousness at the hospital, he had a story ready, and it was a story that would immediately raise suspicions for every detective who heard it. "I was at the park with my son," he said, his voice still slurred from the drugs. "We were going to meet his mother, then I woke up in the hospital. I can only speculate that I must have been attacked in the park." His story had glaring holes that any experienced investigator could spot immediately. If he had been attacked and robbed, where was Piqui? What kind of attacker takes a child but leaves behind a car full of valuables, credit cards, and cash? Why would someone pour gasoline in the car but not light it? But even more telling was Aramazd's behavior. Any parent whose child was missing would be screaming for help. They would be demanding that police immediately start searching. They would be providing descriptions, offering rewards, barely able to speak through their panic. Aramazd showed no concern whatsoever about Piqui's whereabouts. He answered questions about the alleged attack calmly and methodically, but he never once asked about his son. Never once said, "Please find my boy." Never once acted like a father whose child was in danger. Police immediately suspected that Aramazd was involved in Piqui's disappearance. They arrested him on April 22nd on suspicion of child abduction, and began what would become one of the most intensive investigations in the county's history. But there was a massive problem. They had no body, no murder weapon, no solid evidence of what had actually happened to Piqui. Just a missing child, a father with a suspicious story, and a jacket stained with vomit. For 3 days, investigators questioned Aramazd. He told them multiple versions of what had happened. Each story contradicted the last. Each explanation raised more questions than it answered. But without concrete evidence, without a body, prosecutors realized they did not have enough to hold him. On April 25th, just 3 days after his arrest, Aramazd was released. What happened next would reveal the true nature of this man's character in a way that shocked even seasoned homicide detectives who thought they had seen everything. While Ana Estevez's world was falling apart, while her worst fears were being realized, Aramazd Andressian Jr. was beginning what could only be described as a vacation. When police called Ana on April 22nd to tell her that Piqui was missing and Aramazd had been found unconscious, Ana's first emotion was not even anger or fear. It was a strange kind of relief mixed with dread. Finally, someone else could see that something was terribly wrong. Finally, she was not the only one who understood the danger Aramazd posed, but that relief quickly turned to desperation and rage. When she learned he had been released, after just 3 days, Ana immediately went into action. She drove to the police station with boxes of evidence she had been collecting for months. Videos of Aramazd's violent outbursts, documentation of his erratic behavior, records of his lies, photos proving his instability. "You don't understand," she told the detectives, her voice breaking. "He's capable of anything. Please, you have to find my son." The police assured her they were doing everything possible. They had issued an Amber Alert. They had contacted airports, bus stations, border crossings. Piqui's photo was being broadcast across California and beyond. Every law enforcement agency in the region was looking for the little boy with the bright smile. But Ana knew something the police were just beginning to understand. This was not a typical abduction case. This was not about ransom money or a custody dispute that would resolve itself in a few days. This was about a man who had lost all connection to reality, who was driven by rage and revenge. She organized her own search efforts. Volunteers spread missing child posters across Southern California. Ana spent her life savings hiring private investigators. She appeared on local news shows, her face drawn with exhaustion and fear, begging anyone with information to come forward. "Please," she would say to the cameras, her voice breaking with emotion. "If you see my little boy, if you know anything at all, please call the police. He's just 5 years old. He needs his mommy." Days turned into weeks. Ana barely slept. She barely ate. She would drive the routes between Los Angeles and Disneyland, stopping at every gas station, every restaurant, every hotel. She showed Piqui's photo to anyone who would look. "Have you seen this boy? Have you seen him?" The community response was overwhelming. Thousands of people joined search parties. Churches held prayer vigils. Local businesses donated money for reward funds. Everyone wanted to help bring Piqui home. Search and rescue teams expanded their efforts to include lakes, mountains, and desert areas. Divers searched Lake Cachuma twice, using dogs and specialized equipment. They were no longer just looking for a missing child. As the days passed without any sign of life, they were looking for evidence of what had happened to him. During this entire time, while Anna searched desperately, while volunteers combed through wilderness areas, while an entire state prayed for a little boy's safe return, Aramazd Andressian Jr. was living a very different kind of life. Instead of searching for his supposedly missing son, instead of organizing volunteer efforts, instead of pleading with the media for help finding Piqui, Aramazd did something that defied all human logic and decency. He drove straight to Las Vegas. For 47 days, while Anna's heart broke a little more each morning when she woke up and remembered her son was still missing, Aramazd was living it up in Las Vegas like a man without a care in the world. He checked into a hotel and began what investigators would later describe as a lifestyle completely inconsistent with that of a grieving parent. He gambled at casinos every night. He attended multiple concerts and entertainment shows. He went to a boxing match. He went skydiving, jumping out of airplanes while his son's body lay undiscovered in the woods. He took large amounts of prescription medication. He socialized with strangers who had no idea they were drinking and partying with a man whose child had vanished under mysterious circumstances. But Aramazd was not just having a good time. He was also systematically preparing to disappear forever. He shaved his beard completely. He dyed his hair a light color, changing his appearance significantly. By the time of his eventual arrest, he would be almost unrecognizable from the man who had been released by police in April. Most significantly, Aramazd applied for a new passport. He claimed his old one had been lost and needed to be replaced. While waiting for the passport to be processed, he researched international flights. Investigators would later discover he was looking at routes to countries with no extradition treaties with the United States. He was planning to vanish just before his new passport would be issued. What Aramazd did not know was that police had been watching him the entire time. Detectives had quickly realized that his story about being attacked at the park did not add up. The evidence in his car, his complete lack of concern for Piqui, his contradictory statements, all pointed to his involvement. So while Aramazd thought he was free and clear, investigators were building a case against him piece by piece. They obtained his cell phone records and discovered something damning. After leaving Disneyland at 1 in the morning on April 21st, Aramazd's phone had been turned off completely for hours. There was no GPS data, no cell tower pings, nothing to track his movements during the critical time period when Piqui disappeared. They examined his internet search history from the weeks before the Disneyland trip. What they found sent chills down their spines. Aramazd had been researching remote locations throughout California. He had searched for places with no foot traffic, areas where someone could go unnoticed for hours. One location appeared multiple times in his search history: Lake Cachuma in Santa Barbara County. Investigators realized this had to be where Aramazd had taken Piqui after leaving Disneyland. The timeline made perfect sense. Disneyland to Lake Cachuma would take about 2.5 hours to drive. From the lake to Arroyo Seco Park in South Pasadena would take another 2 hours or so. Since Aramazd was discovered at the park on the morning of April 22nd, that meant he would have been at the lake during the early morning hours of April 21st. Police collected every piece of surveillance footage from the Lake Cachuma area during that time window. And finally, they found what they were looking for. Traffic cameras captured Aramazd's car leaving the Lake Cachuma area on the morning of April 21st. The footage clearly showed Aramazd alone in the driver's seat. There was no sign of Piqui in the passenger seat or back seat. The child who had supposedly been with him when he was attacked was nowhere to be seen. This directly contradicted Aramazd's story. The video proved he had been alone for hours before reaching Arroyo Seco Park. Whatever had happened to Piqui had happened before Aramazd left the Lake Cachuma area. Sheriff Jim McDonnell made the decision that they had enough evidence. Aramazd was becoming a flight risk. His new passport would be issued any day. If he left the country, they might never get justice for Piqui. On June 23, 2017, just hours before Aramazd's new passport would have been issued, federal agents and sheriff's officials arrested him in Las Vegas. This time, they had enough evidence to charge him with murder. Even though they still had not found Piqui's body, even though they could not prove definitively what had happened to him, District Attorney Jackie Lacey authorized murder charges. It would be what legal experts call a no-body case, notoriously difficult to prosecute. But Lacey told reporters she believed the evidence was strong enough for a conviction. When Aramazd was brought back to Los Angeles County on June 30th, facing a murder charge that could result in life in prison or even the death penalty, something inside him finally cracked. Sitting in an interrogation room, knowing the evidence against him, knowing his carefully constructed lies had fallen apart. Aramazd confessed. The confession revealed the horrific truth that Anna had feared, but could not bring herself to fully accept. It revealed the depths of his depravity and the real motive behind this unthinkable crime. "I wanted to hurt Anna," he told investigators. His voice, according to those who heard it, was cold and emotionless, matter-of-fact, as if he were discussing something ordinary. This was the ultimate act of revenge. He explained that murdering Piqui was revenge against his ex-wife. In his twisted mind, Anna had betrayed him by leaving. She had tried to limit his access to their son. She had sought sole custody. She had exposed his lies and his violence. She had taken control away from him, so he took away the thing she loved most. Detective Aguilera would later tell reporters that Aramaz's plan had been even more elaborate than just killing Piqui. He had intended to kill himself as well, and he had put things in motion to make it appear that Anna might have been involved somehow. He wanted to destroy her completely. Take her child, take her freedom, take everything. But the suicide attempt had failed. The drugs had knocked him out before he could light the gasoline. And now, faced with incontrovertible evidence and no way out, Aramazd finally told the truth. He described how he had driven from Disneyland to Lake Cachuma with Piqui sleeping in the back seat, how he had pulled into the remote area near Vista Point, how he had killed his son with a jacket, smothering him while the little boy struggled. After the murder, Aramazd had spent approximately 8 hours in the area. He changed Piqui's clothes, putting him in pajamas. Then he carried his small body about 50 feet from the parking lot into the woods and left him there among the trees. Then he had driven to Arroyo Seco Park to stage the scene that would give him an alibi. The drugs, the gasoline, the fake attack story. All of it carefully planned. All of it designed to point suspicion away from himself. Armed with Aramazd's confession, police immediately returned to the area around Lake Cachuma. On June 30th, the same day Aramazd was returned to Los Angeles from Las Vegas, searchers found what they had been dreading. In a wooded area near Vista Point, about 50 feet from a parking lot, they found the remains of 5-year-old Piqui. He was still wearing the pajamas his father had dressed him in after taking his life. After more than 2 months exposed to the elements, the little boy who loved butterflies and math and making people smile was finally found. When Anna received the call from Detective Aguilera telling her they had found Piqui, she collapsed. Even though she had feared the worst for months, even though logic told her that Piqui could not still be alive after all this time, a part of her had been holding on to hope. Maybe he was being held somewhere. Maybe there was still a chance. That hope died with the confirmation of her son's death. Anna fell to the floor of her home, unable to breathe, unable to process what she was hearing. Detectives had to come inside to be with her because they were afraid she might harm herself in her grief. The funeral for Piqui was held on July 18, 2017, in South Pasadena. Anna carried her son's ashes in an urn, holding him close one last time. She would later tell people that she keeps his ashes in one of his old backpacks. When she goes to places Piqui loved, like the beach, she takes him with her. The courtroom on August 1, 2017, was packed with people wearing white t-shirts. On the front of each shirt was a large photo of Piqui's smiling face and the words, "Justice for Piqui." Aramazd Andressian Jr. stood before Judge Catherine F. Broem and changed his plea to guilty. First-degree murder, no trial, no prolonged legal battle, just a simple admission of what he had done. His attorney, Ambrosio Rodriguez, would later claim that Aramazd pleaded guilty early in the case to spare Anna and her family the trauma of a trial. He said his client wanted to avoid having the district attorney's office file special circumstance, allegations that could have resulted in the death, penalty, or life without possibility of parole. But prosecutors saw it differently. They believed Aramazd pleaded guilty because the evidence against him was overwhelming. The cell phone records, the internet searches, the surveillance footage, the confession. There was no defense he could mount that would convince a jury of his innocence. 3 weeks later, on August 23, 2017, Aramazd returned to court for sentencing. He sat silently at the defense table. His head was now shaved except for a goatee. He looked different from the man who had been arrested, different from the man in the family photos, different from the person he used to be. His attorney told the judge that Aramazd had prepared a statement he wanted to read to the court. But when Judge Broem informed him that if he spoke, he would have to do so under oath and would be subject to cross-examination, Aramazd appeared to change his mind. He chose to remain silent. He did not speak a single word during his own sentencing hearing. Instead, it was Anna who spoke. and her words echoed through that courtroom with a power that left many in tears. Anna stood at the lectern behind Aramazd, looking at the back of his head. This was the man she had once loved, the man she had married in a hot air balloon, the man who was supposed to protect their miracle child. Everything good in my life is missing since my son, Piqui, was taken from me, she said, her voice shaking but strong. I wish that I was taken instead of my son, Your Honor. Life without my son is my sentence. She described how her life had been thrown into chaos that could only be described as cataclysmic devastation when Piqui disappeared. She talked about the day she learned her son's remains had been found, calling it the most earth-shattering day of her life. Piqui was and always will be the love of my life, Anna said, tears streaming down her face. Then she turned her attention directly to Aramazd, speaking to him for the first time since their son's murder. For Aramazd Andressian Jr, I pity you, she said, her voice filled with contempt. You are a failure as a father. You are a failure as a man. And you are a failure as a human being. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Some people were crying openly. Others sat in stunned silence at the rawness of Anna's pain. But Anna was not finished. She had more to say, not just to Aramazd, but to the systems that had failed her son. She spoke about the family court system that had ignored her warnings. She talked about the Department of Children and Family Services that had dismissed her concerns. She reminded everyone that just 1 week before Piqui was murdered, she had told a court evaluator that she was afraid Aramazd was going to do something terrible. She had begged for sole custody with supervised visits only. That evaluator had completely ignored her, and now her son was dead. My son is another victim and statistic of the incompetence of the Division of Children and Family Services, Anna said. The fact that this cowardly man changed his plea to guilty and has now been sentenced does not change anything, nor does it bring satisfaction. She was still searching for justice, she said. Real justice, the kind that would prevent other children from suffering the same fate as Piqui. Aramazd's attorney, Ambrosio Rodriguez, spoke on his client's behalf since Aramazd had chosen not to speak himself. I want to pass on his deep regret and remorse as to what happened, Rodriguez said. There are no words to obviously justify what happened. He noted that his client had taken responsibility for his actions by confessing and pleading guilty early in the case. He said Aramazd had quickly led authorities to Piqui's body so the family could have closure and give their son a proper burial. After court, Rodriguez told reporters that Aramazd had not spoken because he wanted to let Anna and her family make their statements without interruption. He decided that the moment was so powerful, he wanted to let Anna and the rest of her family make their statement, and there was no point in saying anything, Rodriguez said. He was not afraid of cross-examination. But Deputy District Attorney Craig Hums saw things very differently. He told reporters he saw absolutely no remorse at all from Aramazd. None. The guilty plea, in Hums' view, was not about remorse or taking responsibility. It was about avoiding the death penalty. Detective Luis Aguilera spoke to reporters outside the courthouse after the sentencing. He revealed details that had not been made public before. He explained that through their investigation, they had learned Aramazd's plan had been in the works for 3 to 4 months before the murder. His intentions were to kill the child, kill himself, and to have everyone point the finger at Anna as her having something to do with it, Aguilera said. He had put some things in motion in advance to point towards her, alleging that she may have had something to do with following him. We proved that wasn't the case. Aguilera described how Aramazd had driven from Disneyland to the Lake Cachuma area and killed Piqui within an hour by smothering him with a jacket. He spent about 8 hours in the area before driving to Arroyo Seco Park, where he took prescription medication, poured gasoline all over his vehicle, and passed out before he was able to light it on fire. The detective's voice was heavy as he spoke about the case. Even for someone who had investigated countless homicides, this one was different. A father killing his own child out of pure revenge. It was almost incomprehensible. Judge Brogum sentenced Aramazd Andressian Jr. to 25 years to life in prison. He will be eligible for parole in 25 years, around the year 2042. But as Deputy DA Hum pointed out, there is a good possibility he will never get out of prison. The courtroom erupted in quiet crying as the sentence was announced. It was the maximum sentence possible under the circumstances, but for Anna, no sentence would ever be enough. No amount of time in prison could bring back her son. No punishment could undo the months of searching, the false hope, the devastating discovery. Justice, in the legal sense, had been served, but justice, in the deeper sense that Anna was searching for, remained elusive. In the years since Piqui's murder, Ana Estevez has turned her unimaginable grief into something meaningful. She has become a fierce advocate for family court reform, determined that no other parent should endure the loss she has suffered. The case exposed a devastating flaw in the family court system, one that continues to claim children's lives every year. Ana had done everything right. She had documented the abuse. She had gathered evidence. She had followed proper legal procedures. She had begged the court to listen. But the system prioritized parental rights over child safety. The court believed that children need both parents, even when one parent poses a clear danger, even when there is video evidence of violence, even when there is documentation of erratic behavior and threats. Just 8 days before Piqui was murdered, Ana had filed another emergency motion with the court. She presented new evidence. She stated clearly that she feared for her son's life. She begged for supervised visitation only. The court denied her request. The evaluator dismissed her concerns, and 8 days later, Piqui was dead. Statistics on this issue are sobering and often overlooked. Research shows that approximately 900 children are killed each year in the United States by divorced or separated parents during custody disputes. 900. That is more than 2 children every single day. Most of these murders could be prevented if courts took domestic violence and abuse allegations more seriously during custody proceedings. But too often, protective parents are dismissed as being vindictive or trying to alienate the other parent. Their genuine concerns are reframed as parental alienation. Their evidence is deemed insufficient. Ana has worked tirelessly to change this. In 2018, the California State Assembly adopted something called Piqui's Resolution. It is not a law, but rather a formal recognition of the need for reform. The resolution calls for better training for judges and court personnel in recognizing trauma. It emphasizes putting the safety of children first, particularly those who witness domestic violence. State Senator Susan Rubio has been working to turn these principles into actual legislation that would have the force of law. The goal is to require family court judges to receive specialized training in recognizing patterns of domestic violence and child abuse, to mandate that any parent with a documented history of domestic violence undergo supervised visitation rather than unsupervised custody time. This is Ana's way of giving meaning to Piqui's death. This is how she ensures that her son's short life will save other children. This is how she fights against the system that failed her. But advocacy and legislation cannot fill the hole in Ana's heart. They cannot bring back the little boy who made everyone smile. They cannot undo 5 years of watching her only child grow. They cannot erase the memory of that last hug in the parking lot, when Piqui said, "I don't want to go." Ana has spoken publicly about her grief in interviews, sharing details that are almost too painful to hear. She talks about how she still sets a place for Piqui at the dinner table sometimes, out of habit. How she catches herself buying his favorite snacks at the grocery store. How she wanders into his room and expects to see him there. She describes mornings as the hardest time. Every single morning when she wakes up, one of the first things she says is, "Good morning, Piqui." She talks to him throughout the day, updating him on her life, telling him about the things she is doing in his memory. She no longer works as a school principal. Being around children is too difficult. The job she loved, the career she was proud of, the work that made Piqui beam with pride when he told people, "My mom is a principal," all of that is gone now. She works in an office instead, away from the daily reminders of what she has lost. In South Pasadena, at Garfield Park where Ana used to play with Piqui, there is now a memorial, a bench with his name, a stone marker. This is where Ana goes to talk to her son, to feel close to him, to remember the happy times before everything fell apart. She often wonders what Piqui would be like now. He would be 12 years old, probably in 6th or 7th grade. Would he still love math and reading? Would he have discovered new interests? Would he be tall like his father or average height? Would he play sports? What kind of teenager would he have become? These questions haunt her, not knowing who her son would have grown to be, never getting to see him experience his first day of middle school, his first crush, his first heartbreak, his graduation, his future. All of that was stolen from her by a man consumed with revenge. Ana keeps Piqui's ashes with her in one of his old backpacks. When she goes to the beach or other places Piqui loved, she takes him along. She is not ready to scatter his ashes or place them in a permanent location. She needs him close. She needs to feel like he is still with her in some way. The photo that Aramazd sent from Disneyland, the one showing Piqui grinning next to a character costume, hangs in Ana's living room. It is the last photo ever taken of Piqui alive. It captures him in a moment of pure joy, completely trusting, totally happy. Looking at that photo is both comforting and devastating for Ana. It reminds her of who her son was. but it also reminds her of the betrayal that came just hours later. Aramazd remains in prison, where he will likely spend the rest of his life. Reports indicate that he shows no genuine remorse for his actions. He has not reached out to Anna to apologize or express regret. He has not taken responsibility in any meaningful way beyond his guilty plea. According to those who have interacted with him in prison, Aramazd continues to blame Anna. In his mind, she forced his hand. She made him do it by leaving him, by seeking custody, by exposing his lies. Even now, locked away from society, he refuses to accept that the destruction was entirely his own creation. This is what revenge does. It does not just destroy its intended target. It destroys the person consumed by it. Aramazd wanted to hurt Anna by taking away the thing she loved most, and he succeeded in that goal. Anna will live with this pain for the rest of her life. But revenge also destroyed Aramazd himself. He lost his son too. Not in the same way Anna did, but he will never see Piqui grow up, never hear his laugh, never receive his love. And beyond that, he destroyed his own life, his freedom, his future, any chance at redemption or peace. He wanted Anna to suffer, and in achieving that goal, he condemned himself to suffer as well. He will die in prison, alone, despised, remembered only as the man who murdered his own child out of spite. And what did revenge gain him? Nothing, absolutely nothing. It did not change the divorce outcome. It did not give him control. It did not prove anything, except that he was capable of the most evil act imaginable. In trying to destroy Anna, he destroyed himself completely. This is the true lesson of this case. Revenge is not sweet. Revenge is not satisfying. Revenge is not justice. Revenge is a poison that destroys everything it touches. The victim, the perpetrator, the families, the communities, everyone. When Aramazd looked at his 5-year-old son sleeping in that car seat and decided to end his life, he was not thinking about Piqui as a person. He was not thinking about the little boy who loved butterflies and wanted to be a veterinarian. He was not thinking about the child who saved coins to help his mommy buy a house. He was thinking only about Anna, about hurting her, about taking something precious away from her. In that moment, Piqui stopped being his son and became a weapon, a tool, a means to an end. And that is perhaps the most horrifying aspect of this entire case. A father looked at his own child and saw not a person to be protected and cherished, but an object to be used and destroyed in service of his hatred. We want to believe that parental love is unconditional and unshakable. We want to believe that no parent could ever harm their own child. But cases like this remind us that when people are consumed by rage, by revenge, by the need to control and dominate, even the most fundamental bonds can be broken. The family court system that failed Piqui is the same system that fails children every day across this country. It is a system built on the assumption that both parents want what is best for their child, that both parents are acting in good faith, that both parents can be trusted. But what happens when one parent is not acting in good faith? What happens when one parent sees the child as property rather than as a person? What happens when warning signs are ignored because the court does not want to be seen as favoring one parent over another? Children die. That is what happens. 900 children every year, killed by parents in the midst of custody battles. 900 families destroyed. 900 futures erased. Anna's advocacy work is focused on changing this system, on training judges to recognize the difference between a vindictive parent making false allegations and a protective parent trying desperately to keep their child safe. On understanding that sometimes, despite our belief that children need both parents, one parent poses such a danger that any contact is too much. These are hard truths. They go against everything we want to believe about family and parenthood, but they are truths nonetheless. And until the family court system acknowledges these truths and acts on them, more children will die. Piqui's story is not just about one little boy who was murdered by his father. It is about a system that enabled that murder by ignoring clear warning signs. It is about the cost of prioritizing parental rights over child safety. It is about what happens when revenge is allowed to masquerade as love. For parents going through custody battles with potentially dangerous ex-partners, Piqui's story is both a warning and a call to action. Document everything. Every threat. Every incident of violence or erratic behavior. Every lie. Keep records. Take videos. Build an undeniable case. But also know that even when you do everything right, as Anna did, the system may still fail you. And if you fear for your child's safety, trust that instinct. Do not let anyone tell you that you are being paranoid or vindictive. A mother's intuition, a father's gut feeling about danger. These are often more accurate than a judge's ruling based on incomplete information. Fight relentlessly for your children's safety. Never stop fighting. Never give up, because the alternative is unthinkable. As we reach the end of this heartbreaking story, we must remember what this case is really about. It is not about Aramazd Andressian Sr. and his twisted need for revenge. It is not about the failures of the family court system, although those failures are significant. It is about Piqui, Aramazd Andressian Jr., a 5-year-old boy who loved reading and math, who had a huge imagination and a gentle heart, who wanted to be a veterinarian so he could help hurt animals, who saved up coins to help his mommy buy a house, who was so proud that his mom was a principal. A little boy who was conceived after 5 heartbreaking miscarriages, who spent 11 days in the hospital with his mother after a difficult birth, who was truly and completely a miracle baby in every sense of the word. A child who deserved to grow up, who deserved to go to school and make friends and fall in love someday, who deserved to discover his talents and pursue his dreams, who deserved to have a father who protected him instead of one who saw him as a weapon. Piqui's last words to his mother, captured on that car camera, were, "I don't want to go." Even at 5 years old, some part of him knew. Some instinct told him that something was wrong. But he was a child, and children trust their parents. Children believe that their father will keep them safe. That trust was betrayed in the most absolute way possible. The photo from Disneyland, the one showing Piqui grinning with pure joy, is how we should remember him. Not as a victim, not as a statistic, not as a tool of his father's revenge, but as a little boy experiencing a moment of magic and happiness. That moment was real, even if what came after was unspeakable. Piqui's joy was real. His love for his mother was real. His dreams of becoming a veterinarian were real. His gentleness with animals and other children was real. Those are the things that matter. Those are the things that should define his memory. Anna continues to fight every day to honor Piqui's memory through her advocacy work. She turns her grief into purpose, her pain into action. She works to ensure that other children will not suffer the same fate. She pushes for family court reform, for better training, for systems that actually protect children instead of enabling their abuse. In doing this, she keeps Piqui's spirit alive. The little boy who cared about others, who wanted to help, who thought about his mother's future even at 5 years old. That spirit continues through Anna's work. Some stories fade with time, their details blurred by the passing years. But some truths are too important to let slip into the shadows. Some voices, like Piqui's, must continue to echo, even when they can no longer speak for themselves. Revenge promised Aramazd satisfaction. It promised him control. It promised him that he could hurt Anna the way he felt she had hurt him. But revenge delivered nothing except destruction. It destroyed an innocent child. It destroyed a mother's life. It destroyed a family. It destroyed a community's sense of safety. And ultimately, it destroyed Aramazd himself. He sits in a prison cell now, his life over in every meaningful sense, remembered only for the evil he committed. He wanted to be remembered as someone powerful, someone who could not be controlled or dismissed. Instead, he will be remembered as a coward who killed a defenseless child. That is the legacy of revenge. That is what hatred and rage ultimately create. Not victory, not satisfaction, not control, just destruction and emptiness and regret that comes too late to matter. For those of us hearing this story, the lesson is clear. Revenge is not justice. Revenge does not heal wounds. Revenge does not make things right. Revenge only creates more victims, more pain, more destruction. When we are hurt, when we are betrayed, when we feel that we have been treated unfairly, the desire for revenge is natural. It is human. We want to strike back. We want to make the other person feel what we feel. We want them to suffer as we have suffered. But that desire, if we give in to it, will destroy us just as surely as it destroyed Aramazd. It will consume us. It will turn us into something we never wanted to be. It will take everything good in our lives and twist it into something dark and poisonous. The only way to break the cycle is to choose differently, to choose healing over revenge, to choose moving forward over staying trapped in hatred, to choose life over destruction. Ana Estevez has every reason in the world to be consumed by hatred. Her only child, her miracle baby, was murdered by his own father in an act of pure revenge against her. If anyone has the right to let rage consume them, it is Anna. But instead, she chose to honor Piqui's memory by working to protect other children. She chose to turn her pain into purpose. She chose life and meaning and hope, even in the midst of devastating loss. That is real strength. That is real courage. That is the only way forward when revenge has destroyed everything else. Every morning when Anna wakes up and says, "Good morning, Piqui," She is choosing to remember love instead of hate. When she carries his ashes to the places he loved, she is choosing connection instead of despair. When she fights for family court reform, she is choosing to create meaning from tragedy. These choices do not erase her pain. They do not bring Piqui back, but they honor his memory in a way that revenge never could. They ensure that his short life will save other lives. They ensure that he will be remembered not just as a victim, but as a catalyst for change. Piqui Andressian would be 12 years old now. He would probably be in middle school, perhaps excelling in math and science. He might have discovered new passions and interests. He might have made lasting friendships. He might have been preparing for high school, thinking about his future, dreaming about what he wanted to become. All of that was taken from him. All of those possibilities, all of those future moments, all of that potential was erased in a remote area near Lake Cachuma on the morning of April 21st, 2017. But his impact continues. His story has changed laws. His memory drives his mother's advocacy. His name will be spoken in courtrooms and legislative chambers as people work to protect other children. That is a legacy that matters. That is a life that continues to make a difference even after it has ended. Time may dim the details of this case. New tragedies will capture headlines. Other stories will take center stage. But the truth we have uncovered here, the truth about the destructive power of revenge, will never fade. Revenge promises everything and delivers nothing. It destroys the innocent. It consumes the guilty. It leaves nothing but pain and regret in its wake. If there is any hope to be found in this story, it is this, that even in the face of the worst kind of loss imaginable, it is possible to choose light over darkness, to choose purpose over despair, to choose to honor the memory of those we have lost by working to protect others. That is Anna's choice every day. That is her strength, and that is how Piqui's memory lives on. Thank you for staying with me through this difficult journey. This is a story that needed to be told, not because of its darkness, but because of what it teaches us about the true cost of revenge and the power of choosing a different path. Some stories are too important to forget. Some truths are too vital to let fade away. Some voices, even when silenced, must continue to be heard. This has been Faded Clues, where every story matters and every truth deserves to be told.